You're watching The Talking Tavern, and this is part 3 of my interview with Frances. Welcome back, Frances.
Hi, how are you keeping?
Very good, thank you. I mean, your current world, I think you briefly touched on it a little ago, is Rovanna. Could you give us a little bit of an overview of Rovanna, its kind of geography, the people in it, and how it's been developed over the years?
No, Rovanna actually came about in my Tarlant world in 3.5. I had a kind of a sub-adventure from the main Tarlant, which I think I just called it Tarlant actually, after the town. Druid Circle, which was kind of based on a stone circle that used to be near me where I used to live in Rossshire, just north of Inverness. And then Rovanna developed from that in that it actually is where I grew up. I was privileged, to say the least, that I grew up in an incredible place, had incredible freedoms to go romping through the woods, up tracks, obviously horse riding as well with my friends, where I kind of been to 3 different places when I was in Edmonton. But so Rovanna developed out of the Black Isle area, Cromarty Firth area, basically East Rossshire. Although I've not done much adventuring in Rovanna yet, because the most of what I've got written is either the Journey Up the Wild Coast, which is, there you go, the ship thing, and which is a kind of a side quest, depends on what route they decide to take, or the Journey Through the Wildlands, which is the Drove Road. And again, Drove Road stems from the Scottish Highland history, where you had cattle drove roads as well. So Rovanna developed out of that. The towns and villages that I knew, just slightly different names, but they're all in the same place. I can just pop into something and go, right, okay, and I'm describing Black Rock Gorge, for instance, which I'm actually going to keep the same name because I actually really like it. Yeah. It's a place where I love but fear. Right. It has a bit of a legend about it, and it's about a 120 foot chasm. Okay. Quite a narrow chasm, maybe 20-30 feet wider at the most sometimes. Right. Cut through the old red sandstone on the river Glass, Alt Grad in Gaelic. It's got trees either side of it. I can just feel the kind of the slight fear welling up in a little bit. And certainly when I first used to go there was just the one bridge. It was up the back of Eventon Woods and down a bit, and there was a narrow wooden bridge, and you kind of lean over and you kind of go, okay, right. You can see the white foam at the bottom especially if the river was in spate. Yeah. It's kind of okay, and you got the smell of wild garlic and the trees overhanging, the smell of moss, the damp water, maybe a burn or a little river dropping into the chasm. Eventually those 2 bridges. I have a vague memory of my father possibly crossing over a tree, a fallen tree across the chasm. I don't know if that's a false memory or not. Right. But the gorge itself, as I say, it's deep, it's dark, it seems to be very black. And the story goes that there was a Lady of Balcony. I think Balcony Castle doesn't exist anymore. And she's purported to have been trained as a witch. There you go, D&D straight off. Yeah. So this is going to be built into something. And at one point she kind of was boasting, see what I can do, and raised her castle off the foundations. Right. And a few years later, again, a bit more training being given, and she took her maid up to the Black Rock Gorge, to the bridge, and she had the maid tie the apron to the front, and the lady held onto the apron, and the lady was a man came and basically was calling to the lady to come with him, and the lady threw herself into the chasm, right, off the ridge or off the side of the gorge. But the maid had, unbeknown to the lady, untied the knots, so the maid didn't fall down with her. Okay. And back to the castle. So it was the lady basically into the chasm. And as she fell, the keys to the castle fell out of the hook or wherever she had it on her mantle or whatever, and seemingly left an impression in the stone. Now, I hasten to add, I have tried to look for that so-called impression, but I'm not going that close to the edge of the gorge. No. But seemingly there was an impression in the stone. Yeah. I mean, this is good old Highland myth and legend. Yeah. So the maid ran back, a search party went out, nothing found. Some years later, probably one of the castle estate men were fishing towards the bottom of the mouth of the gorge. And he'd had his pile of fish and he'd moved a bit, and he came back and his pile of fish were gone. Trailed into the gorge with the fish scales. Right, yeah. And then he managed to somehow find his way into the base of the gorge, which is quite wide at the bottom of the gorge and quite deep pools, probably a path around the side. And he goes in and he finds a cave, and there he spots the Lady of Balcony standing before a huge roaring open fire, needing dough. And he goes, "Lady, come away with me." And the lady kind of goes, "I can't," and she's manacled. And you can't leave either. And she looks round and there's 2 big black curs, big black dogs.
Roll for initiative.
Absolutely! Yes! So you can see where so proper myth and legend. He does get, she throws dough to him and he runs away. He goes down, he says, "I found the lady." And they go back and they never find the path into that gorge again. And even they say that the mist rising from the gorge is the Lady of Balcony baking bannocks for the devil.
Right.
And that gives that place an era of...
Yeah. So you really grew up with all this folklore was always in the background, I guess, and it's obviously stayed with you as well.
Talking about what books earlier, yes, I suppose that Highland Superstitions book probably sat in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
I go around taking photographs of historic Scotland boards of maps of, like in Orkney we have Bishop's and Earl's Palace in Kirkwall, kind of medieval palaces basically, ruins, but they still have map plans, old houses. Fowles Castle near where I grew up, it's kind of like an old mansion castle.
Yeah.
There's a place in Caithness, Sinclair Gernigo, which is on the cliff top. Absolutely hidden gem that I found last year. And all these places, they're in my head, bursting to be for D&D.
Yeah, end up on the
when am I going to use
or
them?
the game.
You know what I mean? It's just... and I can go for a cycle and go, "Oh, that would be quite good for D&D." Never write it down.
Oh, need a dictaphone or something like that.
I think I'm going to have to start recording. I do have notebooks. When I go to cafes and tea rooms, I'm always carrying my box, with the Rovanna stuff in it, with my little mapping book and things like that. So you can quite often find me in a tea room somewhere in Orkney, sitting, drawing my maps. It's lovely, actually.
Yeah, nice way to spend an afternoon.
So, just taking inspiration from the landscape.
Yeah.
That's why I end up having hundreds and thousands of photographs.
Yeah, tell me about those photographs, because one thing I noticed from following on Twitter is that you regularly post these beautiful photographs of this sort of scenic landscapes, woodland, that sort of thing. So I think we can take a minute now just to have a look at some of these photographs now, so I'll bring them up. As we saw then, absolutely beautiful scenic photographs. I'm guessing anything you can get your hands on in terms of a beautiful landscape or an exciting sort of little location is something that's ammunition for a game.
Absolutely. Every time I'm out and about, I don't need to take so many photographs. I really don't. But I'll take. Oh, that'll be great for D&D. But the amount of times I don't. I'm a wee bit of an artist as well. I have done a few courses up here, and I've always drawn from when I was a teenager. I've still got them in a portfolio somewhere. So I do like drawing and things. Mm-hmm. But setting the time down, you want to, do I write D&D? Do I draw maps? Do I draw pictures? Do I do photographs? Do I play with my horses? Do I do housework? No.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I see something, I went, oh, D&D. And my head's always going, oh, D&D. Is it a healthy obsession? I don't know.
Yeah. If I only
but
have time.
It's for creative writing. I quite like creative writing, even though I don't do it that often. But then D&D is creative writing at the end of the day. So, like, when I was at Elgin Cathedral back in May, stunning cathedral, there was a mausoleum, just a walled bit, very typical, certainly very typical in a Scottish graveyard. Mm-hmm. and it had an arched doorway into it, and tall walls, taller than me, probably 6-7 foot tall walls, arched doorway, and a very old, rotten wooden doorway. I think I actually posted that on Twitter somewhere about where does that take you, actually.
Yeah.
The door was off on the hinge slightly and slightly open, and I thought, okay, there's a description. I think it's more to help get the descriptions out. So there's something I can describe.
Yeah.
Stone circles. We've got 2 stone circles in Orkney. Obviously, stone circles are great for D&D.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As well.
Get some
And I love forests. My Rovanna region is forested mostly at the end of the day. Although the elves have left, or most of them have, for whatever reason. I have no idea. This world is only part of a world.
Do you still let the players play as elves, or?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
that's fair enough then.
Yeah. There's still a community of elves in Haven Glen. I can't remember. I've actually borrowed from Tolkien in terms of the elven language, Tolkien, to name them.
Could do far worse than borrow from Tolkien.
Loads of inspiration from everywhere. It's usually forests and castles, actually, for me.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if the worst came to the worst, who needs to write it down when it's in there?
Yeah.
Even though I should maybe take notes. I'm wanting to learn to condense stuff. Because when I write with far too much detail. So, I mean, that's so much detail.
Yeah.
And you don't need it in D&D.
So are you quite a descriptive DM then, would you say?
If I get the chance to, yeah. If I get a chance to.
Which is interesting because from observation and from myself personally, I think that's probably the area I and a lot of others have most trouble with. It's easy to forget about, the way something looks or the way it smells and that kind of thing, and that can really add a massive amount of atmosphere to a game and really draw players in.
Yeah, I can describe that stuff, but when it comes to your combat or describing combat, oh yeah, you hit. Oh, that's so lame. Yeah, I'm trying to encourage pupils at school. So if they hit something or kill something, I said, okay, how do you kill it?
Yeah.
How do you swing at it? What are you doing? So I'm trying to get them to actually describe their actions for me.
Tried rewarding them with inspiration?
Yes,
okay.
I do. I had a recent experience in the Raiders camp after Greenest in Horde of the Dragon Queen, and I had this roguish. I gave basically a rogue character sheet to this young man, and he was trying to sneak in to rescue Leosin, as were the others, but 2 of them had already been one had been captured, one was a replacement character who was already captured because she managed to kill herself. And basically he went to cut the tent.
Yeah.
So he described what he was doing and cut the tent, and the tent went and his stealth check failed fairly miserably, but he managed to kind of get away and hide in a shrubbery.
Yeah. So
roll another stealth check, but the guards went round the back to look at the cut in the tent and going, what was going on and all that. And he failed, and he went and looked, and I basically said to him, and they're coming up to look at you, still fairly quiet in there, but they think they've heard something in your shrubbery area. What did you do? And all he did, he just stood up and he went, and ran! And so he got inspiration for that, because so I actually kind of let him get away with that one.
Yeah. It was entertaining enough.
So funny.
Yeah.
Description of things is my forte, description of actions is not so good. And in terms of role-playing people, I think I probably play them all the same. I do have an inkling of wanting to play a whispering monk at some point, though.
Yeah.
Who always talks very, very quietly until he actually needs to shout, and to give everyone a fright.
Yeah.
It would be nice just to go again and play another game, or find different groups, because it's in Orkney. Yes, there are groups, but it's really, really limiting. You kind of partly don't want to admit you played Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
In the same way as you don't really want to admit you're video gaming. Because I didn't know about video gaming until my mid-30s. So I came to that late, and that's Elder Scrolls Oblivion's fault. Because I saw Elder Scrolls, 2005? With a friend's boy, 2005. Having been playing D&D at school for 5 years. And these boys were playing Elder Scrolls on their 360, and I just looked at it and I went, oh, That's Dungeons and Dragons! That is fantastic! It took me 6 months before I plucked up the courage to buy an Xbox, and then I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, and presumably you've played Skyrim and...
Oh, 5 times.
No.
All different endings.
How about the online?
Nope.
Tavern online?
When you have an internet connection that's doing well tonight, we're not good. We don't have fibre. Well, we do have fibre, but it's 2 miles away, but it hasn't made a difference to us.
Yeah.
It's frustrating if you're doing online gaming.
I think I've not often been a personal massive fan of MMOs anyway. Just because I like the big worlds, but I think the problem is when everyone's special, no one's special.
Absolutely. You've got to be the hero in your own world.
The children are almost teaching you
they're leading
introducing you into all these new games and so on. It's brilliant.
I think it's fantastic. As I say, it's a great excuse to be able to do it, isn't it?
Exactly.
At the end of the day.
Right. Before we go, how best can people reach you and keep up to date on these projects and your Twitter and so on?
I think at the end of the day, it's just following the Adventures in Rovanna blog. I'm not a great regular blogger, but I'll throw things on there when I can and when I have time. I have a full-time school librarian, I've got horses and other things, and garden. And Twitter as well is how I keep up. And if anybody wanted any information, just DM me on Twitter. Yeah, I think.
Nice. Highland Lass with a 4 in
the Lass, capital H, capital L, and a 4 in the, and it's Highland Lass in Twitch as well.
Yeah, okay.
If anybody who's interested in Dungeons and Dragons in schools, if they go onto my Twitter, they'll find the link to my library webpage, or not my library, but my library blog. The blog has just about the history of my D&D. It has kind of the players, what they need, how to play it just in simplified diagrams and things like that, simplified guides. I've put a quick reference guide up, and the equipment, as I say, the equipment they need and everything like that, and also the links to curriculum if any educationalists out there are interested as well. Certainly links to the Scottish curriculum, so how it fits in.
Well, if we could get some more schools doing this kind of thing, that would be a massive achievement, wouldn't it?
It would be super. I have to say that the other secondary school in the county also run Dungeons and Dragons, because I play with the teacher that runs it sometimes.
Brilliant.
So both our schools are running Dungeons and Dragons activities. As I say, the D&D, it's worked really, really well. Sometimes I think, I want a break, but actually, nah. I'm getting used to the short sessions, and I'm coming away this last 12 months or so, definitely much more satisfied in my ability to control a 40-minute session, 45-minute session, and stopping at the right time.
Yeah. Thank you ever so much for this interview. I've really enjoyed it, and keep up the amazing work that you're doing at the school and introducing the next generation of players. And please keep posting the amazing photographs and the wonderful information that you put on your blog.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to stop. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.